Hopefully you can see my screen here. And nice to see some faces. As I mentioned earlier, before some of you who are later coming in, please share your faces so that I can see who I'm talking to. I would really appreciate it. So this morning, I want to talk to you about, about the climate crisis, as I call it. So I'm Bill DeVincenzi. I've been teaching here at San Jose State for 28 years. Prior to that, I was a financial executive and did that route for about 28 years as well. So two very long careers for me. As far as when I retired for about the third time, I decided, what did I want to do with the rest of my life? And the thing that really hit me was the climate crisis. So I went to be trained in Los Angeles in 2018 by the Climate Reality group led by former President Al Gore. I since then joined the Silicon Valley chapter of Climate Reality. I've been on their speakers bureau for the last 4 years, and I've probably given over 50 talks like this one. So I enjoy doing this and keeping people informed about the reality of the issue. I'm also Vice President Treasurer of Elders Action Network and Elders Climate Action. I'm trying to work with us old farts to try to get people back into the mentality that they had in the 60s when we were activists and get active about this particular problem and work together with youth to make a sustainable future. And also I am faculty in residence for sustainability here at San Jose State. And again, another job I really enjoy doing and helping our university become more sustainable. Okay, this forward thing is not working exactly the way I wanted to. As far as ground rules are concerned, I don't have any political affiliations. To me, this has always been and will be a moral and humanitarian issue. And it's a thing that we all need to work together on, regardless of our political, religious, or whatever beliefs. I use the scientific method as a former professor. I do my own research. I vet my own sources. What I want to provide you is real information, okay? You know, a lot of stuff you read in the papers and magazines and what have you, you don't know who's funding those sources. I don't get funding for this. I'm doing this because I want to provide the reality of the situation to you. Why am I doing this? Because I'm concerned about the future that I'm leaving for my children, my grandchildren, all future generations, and all life. And when I talk about grandchildren, this is you. You are the age of my grandchildren. So I'm speaking to you directly. So the talk is broken down into three parts. The first part is, must we change? And, is this a real problem? And then the second part has to do with, well, can we? Do we have the resources and the ability to do so? And then finally, and most importantly, do we have the will to make it happen? So first, let's get started with must we change? Is climate change real? There's a lot of people out there who, think it was a hoax, former administration included. And is this really a problem? So let's address that right now. So to start you off, I want to talk a little bit about global warming and how that happens and why it's a problem. So you're looking at a picture from one of the astronauts, and you're seeing an Earthrise here in the background coming up, and it's illuminating our atmosphere. And that blue membrane you see there is our atmosphere. It's about 5 miles thick, but when you consider the fact that it's surrounding a ball that's 25,000 miles in diameter, it is a very thin membrane, and yet we are totally dependent on that for our lives. So the sun provides heat and sends it our way, and it penetrates through that atmosphere and warms our planet. Okay, so that's the good news. That's why we're all here. Some of that heat gets radiated back into space in the form of infrared waves. And the good news is that the planet doesn't get too hot. And you can see the effect of this when you look at the pictures of the Earth from space and you see that beautiful glowing globe. Well, that's because of the reflected light from the sun. So some of that light, however, is trapped by the atmosphere, has always been. And so what this has done is provided us with a nice kind of level, sustainable temperature and climate, and it's been that way for hundreds of thousands of years. So that's the good news. The bad news is that we have been spewing 162 million tons of global warming pollution into that atmosphere every 24 hours. And so what's happened is, if you just notice, that little membrane just got thicker, okay? And that atmosphere is now trapping more and more of those heat related waves, and less is going out. And so this is what's causing the planet to warm beyond the levels that it used to. So that's global warming in a nutshell. So why this is happening is the amount of carbon dioxide, or CO2, that we're putting into the atmosphere. And you can see from around the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, this is just man-made, okay? You can see that it kind of started, and then right around World War II ending, it has just grown exponentially. So hopefully this is a sign that something is starting to happen, but not nearly enough, okay? It looks like maybe we might be seeing some leveling off. I would certainly hope so, based on all the attention this is getting. And that is something that really needs to happen. So where is all that CO2 coming from? Well, you can see, for, industrial processes, mining, burning of fossil fuels, crops, production of oil, transportation, both air and land, landfill, industrial, it's all of the above, right? So lots of different sources of this warming. And so what's happening is depicted here. If you look at the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over the last 800,000 or so years, you'll see that, it's carbon dioxide between 200 and, let's say, 300 parts per million has been pretty consistent until the Industrial Revolution. And all of a sudden, you see this gigantic spike in CO2 in the atmosphere. In fact, sorry about this date, but today at 2022, we're at 420 parts per million. So it's continuing to go up. Okay, now you say, so what? Well, here's the answer. If we superimpose the heat of the planet, which is in red, with that same chart on carbon dioxide, you will notice a very startling correlation between the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and the heat of the planet. So I bring you to today, and again, we're talking about 420 parts per million as of now. The heat, fortunately for us, has not yet reacted to this, although it's starting to. And the reason, you can see a little bit of it here in this particular area here, you can see that there's a time lag. And I don't know how much that is. That could be 100 years, it could be 10 years, it could be whatever. But there's a time lag between the peak in carbon dioxide and the peak in the temperature. That's what's saving us right now. We cannot allow this red line to duplicate the blue one, because that would mean the end of all life as we know it on this planet. So here is the seriousness of the problem. The only saving grace is we seem to have a little bit of time here to make things right. Now, are we seeing evidence of the heating happening today? And the answer is yes. Sorry for this slide here, but what it's basically saying is that 20 of the 21 hottest years on record have happened since 2002. So, and the last 8 years in a row have been the hottest. So you can see, yes, we are seeing evidence that it's getting hotter, no question about it. So just a real terminology thing about, you hear terms like global warming, climate change, weather. Global warming is basically the cause. The planet is getting hotter. Climate change is the effect of global warming. But the weather related to climate change can be either warmer or colder. Just depends. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And the term existential threat, which you hear a lot, literally means threat to our existence. And I don't know how many people really understand that terminology when it's used. All right, so where's all this heat going then? We're getting a whole bunch of heat coming down on the planet. Well, fortunately for us land dwellers, 93% of that heat is being trapped in the ocean. Okay, now that's not very good for the ocean and ocean life. One of the big impacts of the warming ocean is that it leads to more intense hurricanes, which we are seeing a lot of evidence of right now, okay? The hurricanes intensify more rapidly, they hold more moisture, and the storm surges have been very serious and causing sea level rise. And the storms tend to stay around longer, and that has a problem like this one, where Hurricane Harvey dropped 50 inches of rain on Texas in 5 days. Now, to put things in perspective, San Jose, we've got roughly 5 inches of rain in our entire rain season last year. 50 inches in 5 days is amazing. Okay, so more intense hurricanes, more precipitation, more damage being caused. In fact, in 2020, we had a record 30 named storms. The average is 12. But a couple of things happened. One is that Hurricane Delta went from a tropical storm to a Category 4 in hurricane in 30 hours. Now, the problem there is people don't have time to react. You can't evacuate. There's no time. So this is a serious problem. This year, you've all been reading about Hurricane Ian, which caused $67 billion in damage in Florida alone. Okay, so these hurricanes are getting more numerous, they're getting more intense, and they're getting more frequent. And there's the problem. I mean, yes, we've had hurricanes in the past, but not like this. Fires. You've also been reading about wildfires, especially here in California, but all along the western United States. And you can see that there's a direct correlation between the heat and the acres burned in these fires. So just to kind of give you a rundown, in the last 2 years, we've seen the 5 largest fires in history here in California. And right now we still see, we have the Oak Fire burning in Yosemite, and we still have another fire burning close to Tahoe. So fires are kind of a thing of norm right now. And this is a picture of the fire that is burning right now near Tahoe. You remember the fire last year that burned almost down to South Shore. So Tahoe's had more than its share of fires. So fires is really a serious problem. Worldwide, it's the same. Okay, if you look at these charts here, the last 40 years, you'll see the increase in extreme weather catastrophes around the planet. So it's not just unique to us here on the West Coast of the United States. So one question that you might have in your mind is, well, how can global warming cause extreme cold weather? That doesn't make sense, does it? Well, actually, it does. So in 2018, the temperature in the North Pole had gotten to 50 degrees higher than normal. And you say, whoa, what caused that? Well, there was an extreme hot weather condition in Northern Asia that kind of pushed northward into the polar regions. The problem is that the polar vortex, which you may have read about in the papers also, is just simply a mass of cold air that kind of circles around the North Pole. But when that hot heat wave hit it, it caused it to split. And so this graphic kind of shows you what happened here with the heat wave from Asia hitting the North Pole area, causing it to warm and sending extreme cold down into northeastern Europe and northeastern part of the United States. The impact was in Chicago, for example. I have a niece who lives just outside of Chicago. The boardwalk froze over around Lake Michigan. The temperatures were down to a -22, and if you included the wind chill, it was like -50. My niece said it was so cold, it hurt to breathe outside. And if you ever remember, you drink something really cold and that pain in your throat, same thing, and that was just from breathing. England, Italy, they all suffered from that particular freeze. If you remember the cold snap we had in Texas last year, you're like, where did that come from? Same issue. Polar vortex pushing cold air down into the southern part of the United States. So reaching even further south. Let's talk a little bit about sea level rise. You see that 2 of the top 10 cities, Miami and New York, are at risk in terms of damage from sea level rise. This is an interesting picture because this is Miami Beach, and this is at a king tide. This is downtown Miami Beach in a parking lot. And yes, that is an octopus floating around in the garage in Florida. So they're experiencing problems right now. They're spending billions of dollars to try to hold back the flood during king tides, but it's a real issue. Another staggering statistic: worldwide air pollution kills about 9 million people every year. I mean, we worry about COVID and the millions of people that have died from COVID. Air pollution does a lot worse. Okay, so again, it has to do with the warming and the droughts and the fires and all of the above. Here in the Bay Area, in 2020, we had 51 spare the air days, which was a new record. Now, this, as you probably recall, was due to the fires that were burning very close by here in 2020. So we haven't experienced as bad of a Bay Area air quality since, but we are experiencing some from the fires that are burning up in Yosemite and around Lake Tahoe. So the other problem that we're having is species extinction. So we are at risk of losing 50% of land-based species in this century. And that's a lot. And scientists are calling this the worst mass extinction since the extinction of the dinosaurs. Only this is not an asteroid causing the problem, it is us. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about some feedback loops. By the way, I'm going through the bad news first. There will be better news coming. So don't phase out on me here. But I need to get across the severity of the problem. Now we have what I call, or what is called, feedback loops, that sequence of events that kind of spiral around and seem to get worse and worse as they go and are extremely difficult to. So I'm going to talk about 3 of them. The albedo effect is basically the loss of Earth's reflectivity. So I told you early on that a lot of the sunlight is reflected back out in space, which is a good thing. Otherwise, it would get too darn hot here. That reflectivity is being lost because a lot of snow and ice are melting. In fact, they reflect 85% of the sunlight. Oceans absorb 93, as I said before. So when the sea ice melts, they're turning the best reflector of sunlight into the worst absorber of heat from sunlight. That's bad, okay? So the feedback loop, and I'll talk about this, the same loop in all 3 of these. You burn more fossil fuel, you put more carbon dioxide, the planet gets warmer, sea ice melts, more ocean is exposed, ocean absorbs more heat, more ice melts. You can see the spiral effect that's going on here. The staggering numbers: ice around the world has decreased by 75% in the last 40 years, which results in a loss of in reflectivity of roughly 40%. So 40% of the heat that used to be reflected back out into space is now staying here. So again, big part of the problem. Permafrost, billions of tons of biological matter. Okay, so back in the last ice age, it used to be a lot warmer in the north. Well, that kind of froze over and a lot of that organic matter got buried in the ice. Well, now it's melting, okay? And when it melts and that organic matter is exposed, it decays and it releases methane along with CO2. Methane's about 80 times more potent than CO2. Fortunately, there's not as much of it up there. The other fortunate part is that methane, being a heavier molecule, comes back down out of the atmosphere within 10 to 12 years, whereas CO2 will stay up there for thousands of years. So CO2 is still the biggest problem. But again, the feedback loop, permafrost melts, more CO2 and methane go up there, warms the planet, more permafrost melts. The danger here is that if a lot of that permafrost melts, you could reach a tipping point where it becomes uncontrollable and it just feeds itself, and it's a self-perpetuating thing. That is something we really want to avoid. You hear this term about, oh, we got until 2030 to do things. This is one of the reasons, okay? This is one of the reasons why 2030 becomes a very important date. Lastly, the forests. The forests, as we call it, the lungs of our planet. It inhales CO2 and it exhales oxygen. It is the greatest thing we've got going for us. So by reducing the CO2, it cools the planet. But due to deforestation and fires, less carbon dioxide is being absorbed by trees. In fact, a decaying forest actually releases CO2 back into the atmosphere. So again, same kind of feedback loop, starting with the burning of fossil fuels, creating a warmer, drier planet, more droughts, more fires, more trees die, less CO2 is absorbed, on and on in a vicious cycle. Here's the issue with the deforestation is that scientists are saying that the Amazon could reach a tipping point, again, roughly around 2030, that could transform it from a rainforest, which is our largest rainforest on the planet, into a savanna, and releasing tens of billions of tons of CO2 in the process. Again, this is something we can ill afford to have happen. So when we talk about having actions taken by 2030, we need to get something done.
We have a good question here in the chat about the CO2 emissions.
Yeah.
Would increasing CO2 and other GHGs have an effect on our agriculture and food or forests?
All of the above. I did have a large section on, I just don't have time to talk about, the effect on agriculture, it really depletes the nutrients in our, like corn and other foods that are being grown. And the droughts make it more difficult to grow. It's really having a severe impact on agriculture as well as forests. Did I answer the question? I hope.
Yeah, Becca says yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Becca. As far as recent headlines, so you've probably read about all of these. The United Kingdom, hottest day on record, melted airport runways, melted railroad tracks. Come on, that's got to be pretty nasty. Austin, Texas, hottest 3-day stretch in history. Alerts in 28 states affecting, that's a third of the population. Wildfires in Europe. Comments from the Secretary General of the UN. We're facing collective suicide. We're fiddling as the world burns. And IPCC all chiming in. Yes, we're having extreme heat problems. So the question I'm sure you're all asking right now is, are we doomed? And the answer is no. Is there a solution? And the answer is yes. Now, it seems very simplistic what I'm saying here, and it's very difficult to get this going. But we got to cut greenhouse gas emissions. We have to stop deforestation. We have to regreen the earth, meaning replant all those trees. And we need some technology help here to remove the CO2 from the atmosphere. More trees will do it, but I think the trees are going to need some help in the near term. So this is not rocket science. We have the technology. We just need the will. And the question is, will you? Because it is your future that we're talking about. I want to just briefly mention the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They completed a study recently that talked about the implications of a 1.5 degree, which is what you heard about in the climate accord, the Paris Accord, or 2.0 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. Right now, today, all these things I've just been talking about, the droughts, the fires, the floods, has been due to a 1.1 degree Celsius increase. Okay, so think about that. So if we get to 1.5, it's going to be worse. And if we ever make it to 2.0, it's going to be much worse. All right. So, and the time frame in their study moved from 2050 to that magic date of 2030. Okay. So 2030 is less than 8 years from now. So we can't waste time. We need to take action now. I have a little thing sitting on my desk here. It says we can't be a bystander. We must be an upstander, meaning we need to stand up and take action. All right. There is another slide coming slowly. So one other issue I want to address, we're talking about a 1/10 of a point in Celsius, and what a big difference that is. And you say, well, gee, come on, I can handle a degree warmer in the sun, whatever. No, think about it this way. If the temperature is slightly less than 32 degrees, you have ice. If it's slightly like 1/10 of a degree above 32 degrees, you have water. So here's the tipping point, right? And this is what's happening globally. As the temperatures rise and move north, we're seeing a lot of this ice turning into a lot of this water. Okay, so you can see that a very small impact, a small change in temperature can cause a dramatic impact in our climate. So is climate change real? Yes. Is it serious? Yes. Is it hopeless? No. Okay. And that's the point I want to talk to you about now. So can we change? And the answer is yes. We have the solutions at hand. It's called clean, renewable energy. So a comment by the International Energy Agency. All the technologies we need to achieve the necessary deep cuts in global emissions by 2030 already exist. And the policies that can drive their deployment are already proven. So it's there. We just need to do it. Once the world reaches net zero in CO2, global temperatures will stop increasing in as soon as 3 to 5 years. So in other words, we're continuing to put CO2 up there. The more CO2 we put up there, the warmer the planet gets. So if we stop that, it'll put a ceiling basically on how warm things will get. And that can happen in as soon as 3 to 5 years. And that's good news. However, remember that everything that we've put up, all the CO2 we've ever put up in there is still there, because it stays there for a few hundreds of thousands of years. So the only way we're going to get that back down is, one, planting more trees, which will take, according to this statement, roughly 30 years to start absorbing that down into decent levels. But also, I think we're going to need some help from technology, and that's coming. Okay. So I got a question for you. As a professor, I got to give you a quiz, and here it is. So what is the lowest cost alternative for electric energy available today? Is it nuclear? Is it coal? Is it natural gas? Or is it solar and wind? So write your number down, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and I'll answer it for you in a minute. Okay, so let's talk about wind energy. You'll notice that in the last, 10 years, I'm gonna have to drink some more. Wind energy capacity has increased quite substantially. Unfortunately, this only makes up a small percentage of our needs. You say, well, why is that happening? Well, part of it's happening because the costs have come down. See, as a finance accounting professor, I look at cost, and that's what's that to me, that's what's driving it, as well as people trying to do good for the planet. But if it doesn't have a financial benefit, it probably wouldn't happen. Well, in this case, it does. And globally, wind could provide roughly 40 times the amount of energy we need to run the planet. So a lot of wind available and getting more prolific. Solar, same thing. Look at the last 10 years, solar has increased, the amount of solar has increased by 10 times. That's extremely good news. And again, very similar reason. Look at the cost per kilowatt per watt from almost $80, and it's now down to 22 cents. I mean, that's pretty amazing cost reduction. Again, as an accountant, I love it. Now you say, well, gee, if it's gotten so cheap, why don't we see that in the, our everyday usage? Well, look at global energy subsidies. Look how much renewables are being subsidized versus fossil fuel. I mean, 42 times more subsidies go to fossil fuel than to renewable energy. That's got to stop. We need to support legislators who are going to put a stop to this, keeping the fossil fuel industry healthy. We don't need it to be healthy. What we want is a renewable energy industry to be healthy. So that's part of the problem. Now, what would happen if we took that $6 trillion away and levelized the playing field? So here's the levelized cost of energy in the US, and here's the answer to your quiz. As you can see, when we take the subsidies away, nuclear is by far the most expensive, and renewable energy is by far the least expensive. Okay, so 4 would have been the correct answer on your quiz. The reason you don't see that much coal anymore is because natural gas has really undercut coal. So gas is really what's going on right now. Very little in the way of, there's been no coal added in the United States in the last 5 years, and no new nuclear plants as well. So gas has been the big thing, but now renewables should be the future. And to put things in perspective, in 2014, only 1% of the of the world was wind and solar cheaper. By 2019, only 5 years later, 2/3 of the world solar and wind was cheaper. And now we're saying in 2 more years, it will be the entire world. So you can see the change that's happening right now, and this is very heartening, right? To see that this is going on. Enough solar energy reaches the Earth every year, or every hour, to satisfy the world's needs for a year. So again, a prodigious amount of energy available from the sun.
Professor, I have a quick question about wind energy.
Yeah.
So you're talking about onshore, but has offshore wind been explored to the degree that you think it should? And how do you think that that can contribute to these solutions?
Well, there's a lot of there. It can contribute a lot. There's a lot of resistance to to these wind farms on land. People don't like to see them, although they're extremely useful. But out in the sea, I think they're a little bit more palatable, and there is a lot of research going on. I think that you'll see in the future a lot more wind generators, out in the ocean, out in the distance, so that they're not in your face the way the ones on land are. But there's a lot of wind. The ocean, I mean, I would love to see them, use other technologies to use the tides to create energy as well. But no, there is a lot of move afoot to put a lot more wind turbines out in the ocean. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, the question then comes up, well, what happens if the sun's not shining and the wind isn't blowing? And that, creates the question of storage, energy storage. So if you notice here, 2022, we're, and look at the projection to 2050. You say, oh my God, how is that going to happen? But this is where we need to get to, all right, to become totally self-sufficient. Well, for the same reason that we saw solar panels and wind, look at the price of batteries, all right, it's come down by 90% over the last 10 years, whereas the demand is increasing quite a bit as well. So I would expect to see the cost of battery prices continue to drop, just like we saw with the solar chips. So, and we can see it's happening right now in the right direction. Look at the investment. See, this is where this has to happen. The investment in battery storage in the next year will double. And it's expected to double, actually this year, is expected to double from last year. And you can see the increase in that investment. So that's very encouraging news as well. I mean, we have to get there. And another one, this is from Bloomberg Energy, talking about investment in fossil fuel versus clean energy. You'll see the clean energy in 2030 should be like 6 times more than fossil fuel. So it's about 4 times as much in 2025. So the investment money, which is really important, where the new power plants are being generated, is going towards clean energy, and that's the good news.
We have another question in the chat here. Can renewable energy hurt the environment?
Like anything, extracting materials from the ground causes issues with the environment. And so, extracting lithium, from the ground can cause issues. The problem is that extracting coal and extracting natural gas cause more problems. And when you burn those, they cause even more problems. But when you when you use wind or solar generated power, it causes no pollution at all. So you have to kind of take these things into perspective, okay? That yes, extraction is always a process that can harm or damage the environment in some way, but the outcome for renewable energy is so much cleaner. Renewable energy made up 90% of all new electricity capacity globally in 2020, 90%. So again, the trend is going in the right direction. Now, my wife and I were on a little little RV trip a few months ago, and we noticed, we were out down at Moss Landing, and we noticed this huge battery storage site, and we said, what is that? Well, it turns out that is the world's largest battery storage system to date. It's a project from PG&E and Vista Energy. They've created 400 megawatts of storage, and they're going to be adding another 180 or another 350 megawatts. This is huge, and this is the wave of the future. Again, we need this kind of storage so that when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, we have energy that we can continue to use when needed. So that's happening. Automobiles, every single auto manufacturer in the world has got electric vehicles in production right now. And here's the good news. electric vehicles will reach, see, right now, people aren't buying electric cars because they think, oh, they cost too much. They cost, well, look at this. By 2023, this is like next year, in the US, large cars and SUVs, China, mid-sized cars, South Korea, these will achieve price parity, meaning it'll cost you just as much to buy a fossil fuel car as it will an electric car. In 2024, all segments of the car market will reach price parity. This chart kind of shows you why, because we're looking at a cost chart here for fossil fuel cars and electric mainstream, and you'll see that there's a crossover point roughly in the 2023 timeframe they're talking about in the last chart that shows the cost of electric battery powered cars will in the next few years become lower than the cost of fossil fuel powered cars. And folks, when this happens, there's going to be a paradigm shift in terms of purchases of vehicles, because once electric vehicles become cheaper, everybody's going to be flocking to electric vehicles. So this is another positive thing that's happening right now, and that you'll be able to see in the next few years. So very positive information. Some of our biggest automobile manufacturers here in the US, General Motors, they're going to be phasing out fossil fuel powered cars and light trucks by 2035. And you say, well, gee, are they trying to be good guys? Cost savings is driving it. Fewer parts, fewer workers. And it just happens to be the fastest growing segment of the automobile industry. So they're no dummies. They're saying, hey, wait a minute, we're going to jump in right now. They also plan to become carbon neutral in their plants by 2025. That's huge as well. Now, Ford saying, hey, you're not going to leave us behind on this, are spending $11 billion on electric vehicles through the next 2 or 3 years. And they're going to be using renewable energy in their plants also, but 2035. Their new Ford F-150 Lightning pickup truck. Oh, I'm salivating over that one. I have one on order. I want to use that and buy myself a travel trailer and drive totally energy free anywhere I want to go and can camp. I love camping out. So I can't wait for that. Last slide in this segment. You got to appreciate the irony of this one. This is the Kentucky Coal Mining Museum, and they put solar panels on their roof because they estimated that they'll save $8,000 to $10,000 a year at energy costs. You got to love this one. And so my point is, hey, if they can change, so can we, right? So can we change? The answer is yes. You've seen the technologies that we've just pointed out. We can do this. So will we? And now here's the big question: will we change? So in 2015, all the countries in the world agreed to work together to achieve net zero by mid-century. Okay. Unfortunately, the prior presidential administration took us out of the Paris Agreement. Fortunately for us, the new regime put us back into the agreement right after he was inaugurated. So, come on, the U.S. is looked up to as a leader, and if we go out, half the other countries in the world will go out. So we have to be involved in this, and involved in a big way. So common question is, well, what about India and China? They pollute more than we do. Not India, but China does, but only because they have more people. If you calculated China's emissions on a per person basis, we are by far and above in terms of polluting and putting out pollution. So, and historically, if you look at the numbers, the US has put out more CO2 than China and Russia combined. So we're still the biggest gorilla in the room, and we need to be aware of that and take action about that. So where are we going? This is a chart that shows new electric capacity being generated, and this one is China. And last year, solar and wind amounted to 58%. If you throw in hydro, they're like 70%. So 70% clean energy. And then they have some coal and oil and gas still. So, and 2 years ago when I said the same chart, the number was more like about 55%. So you can see that this is moving to like 70% in the last 2 years. So China definitely moving in the right direction. And this is my favorite, my second favorite chart, which is this is a solar farm in China. And obviously you can only see this from the air, but you got to love the sense of humor here in this particular one. How about India? Well, India is doing the same thing. India's new capacity in 2021. Now, again, this chart was about 60% last time I looked at it 2 years ago. They're 74%. And if you throw in hydro, they're up to like 80% is renewable energy. It's really, India is making their move as well. So things going in the right direction. Now, Europe has been, lights out the best, forever. They're well over 90% now from wind and solar. So they've been doing a good job. So where do you think the US is? I'm going to give you a little chance to think about this one. Are we at 25%? Are we at 50%? Well, where do we think we are in terms of new electric capacity? Well, surprise, surprise, 80% of new capacity in the United States was from wind and solar, 80%. That's huge. And battery storage accounts for another 10%. So, this is stored energy. Natural gas is down to about 20%. And you notice no coal. Interesting, huh? And even more by 2023, so by next year, in about 6 months, the US is expected to retire another 19 gigawatts of coal plants and add 197 gigawatts of solar and wind. So you can really see the direction and the trend. We're really, really making it happen. And as you know, I'm sure you've read about it in the papers, this last month, the United States passed the largest, most comprehensive climate change and emissions reductions bill ever. $370 billion will be going towards the reduction of the effects of climate change. So keep your hats on that one. Now people think, well, gee, if we get rid of coal and fossil fuels, there'll be a lot of jobs lost. Well, look, check this out. The two fastest growing occupations in the United States right now are solar panel installers and wind turbine technicians. So yeah, coal and natural gas and miners might lose their jobs, but look at the opportunities they have to stay in the energy business, only in the clean energy business. 370 global companies have made a commitment to go 100% renewable. That's huge. We need industry. I mean, they're probably, one of the biggest, sources of CO2, and they're going 370 of them are going 100% renewable. How about the fifth largest economy in the world, which happens to be the state of California, if you look at it all by itself, passed legislation that by 2045, 100% of the state's electricity will be carbon free. Pretty awesome. Now, investment community has taken a big hit because they fund fossil fuel. But take a look at BlackRock, $8 trillion in assets. That's a lot of assets, issuing a climate risk warning to their investors saying, hey, we're underpricing the risk. And so your portfolios are probably being overvalued. And so they're basically recognizing to their investors the reality of climate change. And last year, okay, yes, they invest in fossil fuels, but they helped elect 2 pro-climate directors to the Exxon board of directors. That was pretty awesome. So good news and bad news on this one, right? And we have to work on these guys to continue to divest. The Fed, long-term monetary policy, now takes climate change and climate risk into consideration when they're considering increases or decreases in long-term interest rates. So, and this will have an impact on economic growth. And the reason, look, we've suffered $1.7 trillion in damage in climate disasters over the last 20 years. So that's why it's important. And the Biden administration has promised to slash greenhouse emissions by 2030. The new legislation will provide $370 billion to help that happen. And we need to build on this. This is exciting. It's the largest investment in climate in our history, and we need to keep it going. I'm going to end with COP26. Good news. We talked about deforestation. 105 nations, or 85% of the Earth's forests, agreed to reverse deforestation. That's fabulous news. And so hopefully we can avoid that tipping point. But the biggest ones, Brazil, Congo, Indonesia, Russia, those are the largest rainforests, and they're in that sign-up list. So we hope that they come through. 100 nations pledged to cut methane emissions. John Kerry promised to end subsidies for oil and gas. I'd like to see that happen. I haven't seen it happen yet, but remember we talked about those subsidies being a problem. US and China agree to work together. You could end that statement right there and say, whoa, that's new, to accelerate emission reductions. The big thing that came out of it is that none of them were satisfied with the results. They didn't think we went far enough. And so they're meeting again in about another month, COP27, to talk about maybe taking a little bit more action. So that's also the good news. The not so good news is currently we're heading towards a 2.7 Celsius increase. COP26, would get us down to 2.0, but still above the 1.5 goal. India committed to go to net zero by 2070, and China committed to go to net zero by 2060, but too late to really make a difference here, guys. And compensation, remember, we cause all the pollution, but the developing countries are suffering most of the damage coming from hurricanes and sea level rise and what have you. And so hopefully there'll be some compensation for these guys. They say, well, why didn't better things happen at COP26? Because there were 500 lobbyists from the fossil fuel industry there, the single largest contingent. As far as I'm concerned, those folks should not be allowed in something like these particular forums. Anyway, so much for that. What can you do? So here's the fun part. What can you as college students do? So here's this handsome gentleman here, who, by the way, has a matching shirt for his bright red Tesla. This is about the best car I have ever driven, the most fun car I have ever driven. And, we've been to Arizona, we've been halfway across the country in this car. It has been fantastic. It is powered by the solar panels on my roof. This is my house, my roof. You can see that in my wonderful view in the distance. So we are driving, based on clean energy. Now you say, well, gee, I can't afford a car or solar panels, or maybe your folks can, but here's something you all can do. If you live in the city of San Jose or anywhere in Santa Clara County, you can join either San Jose Clean Energy or Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and you can ask them you can opt up to 100% renewable energy, meaning you get on, on the internet and you say, hey, I want 100% clean energy delivered to my house or my dorm or whatever, and they'll do it, okay? And it's for the price of a cup of coffee a month. So basically, it's extremely cheap to do this, but you can get literally, because they'll have to go out and it forces them to go out and buy clean energy for you. And so the more people that do this, the more clean energy we see in our system. Right now, from PG&E, you're getting roughly 50% fossil fuel and 50% clean. So we want to improve those statistics, but you can do this. So look into it.
We do have a question here in the chat.
Yep.
Will this trend cause companies like JP Morgan to stop investing in fossil fuels? I'm not quite sure which trend Ryan is referring to.
Yeah, so there's a lot of action happening. This is another thing that students can get involved in, in terms of divestment, because we've just found out that our retirement, CalPERS, is divesting from fossil fuel companies. A lot of insurance companies and investment companies like Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, Fidelity are under a lot of pressure from their constituents to reduce or eliminate investment in fossil fuel industry. That could be the kiss of death for the fossil fuel industry if we take away their source of funding, and keep them from expanding any more than they are. So yes, the direction is, in fact, we have a student club I'll talk to you about in a minute that is working on this issue for the whole California State University system. So let me get back to that. So what else can college students do? Looking for environmentally sustainability related courses. We have a tremendous environmental studies program here on campus. You can certainly take courses if you have some electives. I would strongly suggest you look at some of the courses that they're offering, especially, and then in the College of Science, we have a number of really great courses on climate change. So those of you who are interested in that, please take a look. There is a sustainability minor that will be coming next fall. I know that because I'm making it happen. So, I would suggest that you take a look at that as a possibility for those of you who are not graduating in the near future. On next Tuesday, October 18th, we have a sustainability fair. So it's actually a climate change and sustainability fair. It's going to be on the Paseo. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I invite you all to come and participate in that. There's going to be 42 different organizations that are going to have tables. There's going to be some free food, organic food. There's going to be prizes handed out, a lot of media that these companies will be bringing. So come and just stop by and see what's happening at noon. We're having California State Senator Dave Cortese, who's going to talk to us. He's been a big champion in terms of climate and sustainability. And so, and I will be actually on stage introducing him. So come on down, and I will have my own table, by the way. So come and see me. Also, the Climate Reality Campus Corps is going to have a table there. So you have a lot of opportunities if you're interested in climate to get involved. Come to the fair next Tuesday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the Paseo. Also, your students, you know how to do research. Do your own research on this. Don't just accept what you read in the papers and magazines, because a lot of that stuff, you don't know who sponsors it. So you want to do a lot of your own research. I took climate reality training, because I wanted to learn more and get the real scoop. I don't know when the next training is by Climate Reality Project, but you can go online and look at climaterealityproject.org and see what's going on. On campus, we have an Office of Sustainability. I don't know if you all know that or not, but if you go to the college website or to the university website /sustainability, you'll find a wonderful website talking about all the things we're doing here on campus relative to sustainability. Debbie Andres is the senior analyst in charge of this. Would be happy to help you in terms of any of the areas that they work with, but from clothes closets to you name it, they're doing a lot of work on campus. Then there's my office, Faculty and Residence for Sustainability. So I'm on the same website. If you click on this Faculty and Residence for Sustainability, you'll see even more stuff about what the university has done, the recognition that the university has gotten. We're the top 5% of all universities in the world for sustainability activities. That's huge, right? Nobody knows, but I do, because I figured it out. So but anyway, I'm an accountant, right? So I figured these things out. But we're ranking pretty high, and we should know about it, and we should be proud of it. But I give a lot of information there. By the way, if you come by to my table, I will have handouts on what we've accomplished, what you can do as students, how to get involved. I have handouts on all of that, and we're going to have a fun little game for you to play too. So look for my table on the Paseo. We have a campus reading program. The book this year is All We Can Save, and it's the truth about climate change. So if you go to, again, the university website /reading, you can get a free copy of this book. And this is what the university is pushing this year. So great opportunity. More that you can do. Vote, please. We got an election coming up in the next few weeks. Vote pro-climate. We need you. We need your votes. The last presidential election, we did and we won, and we need to continue to win. We cannot let deniers and anti-climate people, win the day, because we'll be lost. So vote. If you do anything, get out and vote pro-climate. Becoming a climate, get back. What did I just do? I just jumped ahead and I didn't want to. I guess I was right. I'll get there, phones. Okay, there we go. Becoming a climate activist, getting involved in strikes or demonstrations or just in conversations. Again, it's your future. You need to talk to people. Let them know how you feel, and don't be afraid and don't be shy. This is not the time to be shy. Electrify if you have an opportunity, or your parents, to electrify your homes, putting in heat pump like water heaters, which we did, and gas and heat electric dryers, which we just did, and the HVAC system, and induction stovetop, which is what we're doing next. But get gas out of your house. Burning natural gas in your house, results in not only methane but CO2. You don't want that stuff in your house. So if you do use a gas burning stove, please use the vent always and vent that stuff out. Joining an organization has a lot of benefits. You may say, I don't want to join an organization. Well, they provide you with information, good information. 350.org or Sierra Club, or even Climate Reality, provide you with really good information about what's going on relative to climate. Sunrise is a group that's for youth, primarily for youth, that you might be interested in. A very active group. And so if you want to become an activist, join that one. But the whole idea here in joining is that they provide you with information. They do the research and provide you with good information. Live more sustainably. Okay, and you can all do this, right? Before you buy, think about the recycling, reusing, or repurposing whatever it is you want to get rid of, and always go through that little thought process. And instead of just throwing stuff in the trash, we need to become more responsive, using clean energy, like going to San Jose Clean Energy and saying, "Hey, I want clean energy delivered to my house." Do it. Very low cost, and anybody can do this. Eating less red meat, or going vegetarian, or even vegan. Red meat probably is the most impactful in terms of a negative way on the environment, raising cattle, and so to the extent that you can go in this direction, is a very positive thing for the environment. Using public transportation, I'm sure a lot of you do, walking or biking, and please get rid of your single-use plastic bottles. Don't buy those plastic bottles anymore. They just pollute our landfills and our oceans. Use renewable water bottles. I see a lot of you doing that. Keep it up and encourage your friends to do the same thing. Okay, a couple more things you can do on campus. We have just started a campus reality sustainability campus core, and we're affiliated with the Climate Reality Project. I'm the faculty advisor, so I would encourage you to join. They're going to have a table at the Sustainability Fair on Tuesday. So look for the Climate Reality Campus Core team. If you want to join, or if you want to find out more information, contact Jay Inder Singh at Climate Reality SJSU at gmail.com. That's one word, Climate Reality SJSU at gmail.com. And he can give you information about what the club is up to. Still other things you can do. A lot, huh? And by the way, this will all be on a handout that I'm going to be handing out on my table in the Paseo on Tuesday. So you can come by and pick all this stuff up. But writing to your state and federal representatives, they count every response they get. Okay, reach out and connect to your friends. Again, I said research. You can even, if you want, this is a shameless advertisement on my part, but I do issue a weekly or bi-weekly newsletter on climate, do my own research, but it's my name, Bill DeVincenzi at me.com, M-E. Just contact me, and or you can just use my William DeVincenzi account at San Jose State, and I'll get you on this list. By the way, it's my list, nobody else's. Last thing, Climate Action Now. So Climate Action Now is an app, climateactionnow.com, all one word. If you go there, there's a brief video that tells you what the app does, and then you can download it. And basically what it does is it provides you with planet-saving actions that you can take every day. All you need to do is click a button. So it might say, would you like us to let the governor know that you want to reduce single-use plastic? You hit the button and it sends an email. Do you want us to advise your state senator? You hit a button and it sends the same message to your state senator. Do you want, and it's just that easy, okay? And you can take actions that could make a difference. So I do this every morning. I have it actually what I want to say. Send me a message every morning and say, here's 5 actions you can take, and I take them. There's hundreds of actions you can choose from. You can earn points for each one, and if you earn enough points, you can get a tree planted in your name. So kind of fun. See how many trees you can get. All right. So in conclusion, join those who are using their voices, their votes, and their choices to fight for their future, their community, and their world, or your future, your community, your world. So use your voice, use your vote, use your choices, and speak truth to power like your world depends on it, because your world depends on it. All right, thank you all for listening, and I will be happy to entertain more questions.
Thank you so much. That was really informative. I want to personally thank you for giving us so many resources and ways that we can all get involved personally. That's really great.
Well, thank you. And like I say, thank you all. So are there any burning questions? You can either raise your hand or we can go back to the chat. But I'm here for as long as you want to answer any questions you might have. And thank you for all the thank yous.
Feel free to unmute yourselves, or you can type it in the chat or raise your hand. What a comprehensive presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, like I say, it's my passion in life to continue to do this. I've been at this for what, 4 years now, and I think when I retired for the third time, and I looked at well, what is it I want to do with the rest of my life, and I was like, okay, climate change just jumped out at me as, hey, that's the biggest problem I can be working on right now, and so I do it. And I have grandkids. I'm working for them. I'm working for you all because, like I said earlier, you're the age of my grandkids, and I just really feel like I can't be happy if I didn't do everything I could do to make your future life better than what it's going to be if we do nothing. So that's kind of where I am. And I hope you all will continue to get involved and do what you can to help. So I guess you could end the recording